Thank you.
This first image is from 1923, just to orient you with this. This was taken in Quetta in 1923 on that trip where Baba brought them on a long walk back. This is after, obviously, a long time in the sun also. Pendu is there with the white turban. Adi is there behind Baba's left shoulder, and Gustaji behind Baba's right shoulder. And that is a guy named Babu Ubale, or Babu Cyclewali. You'll remember him from the early history. He was also from Pune. You all know that Pendu was Baba's first cousin. Their mothers were sisters. Pendu's mother, Pila, or Piroja. Pila was Shireen Mai's younger sister. She was a little sickly. She and her husband had two children, Asfandiar and Naja. Asfandiar was born on September 4th, 1903. That was one day before Adi. So it's interesting that the four pillars, they became known as the four pillars of Maribod. That is Adi, Pendu, Padri, and Vishnu. And they were all born within 6 months of each other. And whenever I speak about the circle, I give that as an example so people can see how the positioning for the circle members happens automatically and naturally around the avatar. And oftentimes, as it is, they are also interrelated. Many of these families, the Irani families, who became Baba's close disciples, were related to each other going back into Iran. Naja was born in 1908. When Pendu was 14 and Naja was 9, their mother, Pila, died. She was Baba's favorite aunt. Baba used to go there to their home when he was first coming down back to ordinary world consciousness. When she died, of course, Asfandiar and Naja were distraught. Their father, Rustam, which we know of as Masaji, also one of Baba's very close disciples, was also there at the time, and Baba told him, "You have no more concern for Asfandiar and Naja. They are my responsibility now till the end." So this is how close their connection was with Baba through their lifetimes. It was like this, how close they were from the very beginning, Their father, Masaji, went to work for Adi's father in Ahmednagar. And while he was there, you see how people are connected and spiritually inclined. Masaji used to occasionally serve the Saint Galori Shah, occasionally feed him, give him baths. So you see how the connections were. And through that family also, then Pendu, he wasn't Pendu yet, Asfandiar got a connection to Goher and Katie's father in Quetta. And this is where the Quetta connection was. This photograph, by the way, was taken by Goher and Katie's father, also named Rustam. We know him as Rusi Pops. There's so many common names that many of them have kind of nicknames, as you know. This was taken by his brother Sorab in June 1923. But going back, we're going to go through this chronologically so the history all makes sense. Baba went to Manzili Mim in 1922, as you know, after Upasana Maharaj's birthday celebration in Sakori in May. Pendu, that is Asfandiar at the time, was in Quetta working for Goher's father, in one of his shops. He knew Naja, his sister, had written to him saying, Merwan is now Meher Baba, of course. He knew that. He's established an ashram in Bombay. You should go there at first possibility. Don't hesitate. So it happened that his father sent him with another man on a purchasing assignment to Bombay from Quetta. The first thing he did when he was in Bombay is go straight to his cousin, who was at Manzili Mim. The orders at Manzili Mim, the training orders were very strict. So who was at the gate? Asfandiar's own father, who didn't speak to him, turned away and walked inside. That was the order. You don't speak to anybody. You report it to Baba, and he gives you the order what to do with it. So, of course, since it was Asfandiar, he was allowed in, went straight to Baba, bowed down to Baba, and Baba asked him, what do you want to do? He says, I want to be with you. But I had this responsibility here with Rusi Pop. He said, you give it to Mia Khan, who was the other employee of Rusi, give that order to him, and you stay here. You're finished there now. So that is how Asfandiar became connected immediately with Meher Baba as a disciple. In 1923, they went to Ahmednagar for the wedding of Rustam and Frani, that is Adi's elder brother, and Meher's sister. After Maribod was first established on that trip to the wedding, we won't get into all of those details, they went to Quetta, and that's when this photograph was taken. So this photograph is the first in that great series of photographs we have of Meher Baba, June 1923. Good quality images, and we have plenty of them. Let's go to the next image. That's going to be, let me pick one here. Let's go back to the Lonavla because we don't have an earlier one. It'll be the second one from the left there, right there. Let's look at that. Okay, this image, as it's a bunch of people that say unnamed here. This is taken later in 1926, but I want you to just see some of the characters here because they're relevant to the history. Of course, let's start from the bottom. That's Gunny holding, it looks like Bagu, which is one of Ramju's sons. And Ramju, I believe, is holding Melu, which is the eldest son of Rustam. Ramju is sitting there on the right. That is off Baba's left knee. Rustam is sitting to Baba's right. Gustaji is sitting to Baba's left. Bua Saheb is behind Rustam's right shoulder. Important characters. Behind in the back is Padri, the tallest one. Off to his front left shoulder is Sidhu, right there. And Pendu is the man who seems to be facing slightly left with his shoulder more right there. And just below Pendu is Jal, Baba's brother Jal. You may know some of the others, but these are close ones. Chanji is there behind Rustam also. We should point out Chanji with the glasses. Okay, this was taken in December 1926, but after Manzili Mim, Baba traveled a bit. Then he went back to Maribod in January 1925 and began the Hazrat Babajan School and Meher Free Dispensary, Meher Charitable Hospital and Dispensary, not Meher Free Dispensary yet, Meher Charitable Hospital and Dispensary. Padri and Pendu were given primary responsibilities in the hospital and dispensary. And I'll just tell you one story that Pendu told me about how difficult it was for them to please Baba. So Pendu's responsibility was to be the manager of the hospital. And he said he tried his best to keep it clean, but he said every day Bob would come in and find fault. He would find something that was not right. And by that time, Pendu had his nickname Pendu. Pendu came from pendulum because he used to do this. Pendu didn't like meditation, so at Manjali meme, so that he wouldn't fall asleep, he would do this, repeat the name of God and move back and forth like a pendulum. So he became Pendulum, which was shortened to Pendu. That name was given to him in 1923. So now Pendu, who said he couldn't satisfy Baba, he said, one day I was determined to please Baba, one day. So he said he stayed up late and he woke up very early to double check. He made everything right. He went over and over every detail, everything. He said, today Baba will be pleased when he comes in the morning to inspect, because Baba would very vigilantly inspect all of the courses of work at Maribod. So he said that day Baba came in to the hospital, walked right in without looking at anything, raised his arm over a cabinet, wiped his two fingers over that cabinet and showed Pendu the dust on his two fingers. And Pendu was shocked and he slapped Pendu across the face. Pendu said, I realize that's it. I cannot please him. I'm leaving. What's the point? I'm leaving. So he said he started walking towards Ahmednagar. As he was walking towards Ahmednagar, he got about 100 yards away and somebody shouting, Pendu, Baba's calling you. Come back. So Baba's calling. He rushed back to Baba, who slapped him across the face again and said, who the hell do you think you are? Who gave you permission to leave? And Pendu said, and that's why I'm still here today. He kept me and I don't have permission to leave. It's a great story. People shouldn't think that all the early disciples got that severe treatment from him. It was only for the very close disciples. Baba was very strict with them so that he could be more merciful to everybody else in the world. They were the first, that first circle was his first line of connection to all of humanity in the whole universe. So for them, who could not turn back or turn away, they got strict treatment so that he could more efficiently accomplish his work for the whole universe. There's a reason to it. It's not for everybody. That happened. There were 22 months of the first long stay. Baba, as you know, Baba closed everything down by November 1926. And then this photograph was taken the next month. This was just before they returned to Maribod after spending exactly 1 month away. And then the focus was on a new institution that Baba wanted. For the next so many months, Baba had many meetings and discussions because he wanted to have another institution after Hazrat Babajan School happened in what we call the first long stay in 1925 and 26. He wanted an institution with a focus on spiritual training. That was Meher Ashram that began in 1927. And of course, all the Mandali also had a lot of responsibility in the running the function of the Meher Ashram. Baba wanted to give select boys spiritual advancement and spiritual training. This was for future spiritual responsibility in the spiritual hierarchy. The Mandali's job was to do whatever he said, as usual. There was no question for them. Their responsibility was to just follow orders and do whatever he said. So Pendu also had various duties. They, they, it's not that their minds were cool and calm then. They went through a lot of inner turmoil through all of these things. It was a very difficult life. It was a difficult life. That story of Pendu in the hospital is just one example, but it went on and on like that. It was like that. Many of them had these experiences. And this is the way Baba brought them to the brink, only to haul them back. And he kept them. He did keep them with him. Pendu's responsibility personally at a certain point, which is when Baba was in seclusion in his crypt cabin on the hill, crypt was below, Pendu had the responsibility to give Baba his daily bath. And that would happen actually in the crypt, now where Baba's body is. That would happen below in the crypt. Pendu would assist Baba in his daily bath there. And he said, and then all the water would drain into one corner that was low, and he had to mop it all up, pick it all up in the bucket and take it back out. How close these people were. That went on, as you know, the story of the Meher ashram becoming Prem ashram, the movement to Toka, all of these very dramatic stories happened then. In Toka, several of the Mandali became very sick by the end of the stay. It was the end of the monsoon there. Toka is next to the river, and it was becoming winter. So a few of the Mandali became quite ill. Pendu was one of them, and they had the work of dismantling the Toka ashram and bringing it all back to Maribod again. They just continued doing their work, but Pendu didn't get better. Now into January, he was being treated, but what happened is Baba's brother Baram was working in the dispensary, and he was told to give a specific medicine to Pendu, and he made a mistake and gave Pendu something that was either very acidic or very caustic. I don't know what it was, but it almost killed Pendu. His throat seized up. He could barely breathe. They didn't know what happened, and they realized that Baram had given him the wrong thing. He was rushed to Pune, and his life was saved, but his health was affected. And to give Pendu a change of scenery and a change of environment to improve his health, Baba sent him back to Quetta. Let's go to the next photograph here. And that will be Pendu with the hat on. Now, this is a photograph of Pendu there in Quetta in 1929. He spent then almost a full year away from Baba in Quetta, working for Gohar's father again. Baba visited Quetta during that year in May. I want to show you another photograph, though. Let's go to the next image of just to the left of that. I always thought this would be a great Christmas card image to send from Maribod. But this is Pendu with snow in Quetta, which was a new experience for them in the winter. This is just after he was sent up there, I believe, to recover his health. Now let's go back to the one just previous. So now it's 1930, Pendu comes back. They move most of the ashram to Nasik. Baba began to travel around the world in the 30s, 31, 32, 33, you know, all those cases of Baba's travel around the world, making connections with other circle people around the world and traveling. And one of those trips was, let's go to this image that was on the screen first of some of the men in China, right there with the Confucius statue, the one on the upper left. Okay, so you may recall that Bob had sent many of these men in 1932 to China because he was planning to travel around the world. And China was an important stop at this point. Herbert Davy was there. And he was Baba's connection in China at the time. Pendu is sitting there at the bottom. They're all looking quite well dressed here. The Confucius statue is there. Vishnu is up behind the statue with his hand over the head of Confucius. That is Rustam there, sitting to the right with the white pants, and Gustaji to his left. Right there. Baba's brother Jal there on the other side of Confucius statue. And this is Kokseb to the left, which is one of the rare photographs we have of him at the time. So there was typical thing with Baba. So many of them were sent, and then they were sent somewhere else, sent back to India. Before Baba arrived there in China, Baba spent about 5 days, mostly in Nanjing, which 5.5 years later suffered some of the worst atrocities in history, at least in the 20th century. But this is how it was at the time. Now, 1933, Baba had returned from one of these trips, and then the Western women plus Quentin Todd came to India in April, and there was that short few weeks for them, mostly up north, visiting Kashmir. Baba was still in the Manali for the most part in Nasik. A few things happened at Maribod at the time. One was that the crypt cabin was vandalized and the material was stolen. So Baba was very concerned about that. It's the whole story of Satyamung, who the early Mandali knew very well, who eventually became, he by that time was one of the people eventually given responsibility to be a watchman at Maribod. Another thing that happened is that the central government declared that the post office building next to the tracks had a combustible roof, so that the building should be demolished. Rustam was sent to try and negotiate a compromise. That they would not accept anything. It was a fire code issue for the railway that had to be obeyed. So in 1933, that building was semi-demolished. Now the material from the stones from that building were used to build the foundation of the kitchen building and a few other things on the hill. The first bathrooms, permanent restrooms on the hill, and the kitchen building. What Baba wanted to do was create that atmosphere for a women's ashram on the hill. It was, again, a perfect environment for that kind of a thing. It was isolated, and it could give him what he wanted to accomplish the work for the women's ashram, which was mostly to be a very sequestered environment around the nucleus, which was Mara. The important thing was the sequestering around Mara. So Pendu was the person who was given the responsibility of making sure that construction happened. He was sent to Maribod, and over the course of a few months, that work was accomplished in 1933. Pendu was always there with Baba and traveling in India. He occasionally traveled with Baba also to the west. You'll see that nice footage we have of Baba in Portofino it shows Pendu walking with him. And this is really beautiful footage. It's nice footage. But after that, Pendu mostly stayed in India, as did most of the other Mandali. In 1938, many things happened. I'm not going to take the time, but I'm telling you a few major points of Pendu's life. In 1938, Pendu was given the responsibility of the major reconstruction on the hill, which we now know as Meher Retreat. It is the second floor that was built over the original water tank rooms on the hill. And that was the time when Baba's tomb shrine, the present day Samadhi, was built also, then in 1938. And at the time the maternity hospital was built. The maternity hospital had an important purpose besides the fact that Baba wanted women of both the East and the West to do this service for poor rural women. It served the purpose of making the place a nonprofit so that people like Elizabeth and Irina wouldn't be burdened with paying taxes to the British government for having a new ashram facility on the hill at Maribod. That work in 1938 was grueling. And Baba, of course, put Pendu through the paces. The last 2 weeks it happened, Baba brought Sarosh there with an engineer and made all these assessments, and in the end gave Pendu the time he wanted. So Pendu told me in the last 2 weeks he didn't sleep at all. He didn't sleep. He had tea on the hill 24/7 for all the workers, as long as they could stay awake. And if they had to sleep, they'd just go and find a place and sleep. But otherwise, everybody was working. It was just nonstop work. He said on the final day, they ran out of roof tiles for what we know as the library in the front. That was the last thing that was being done. Let me see if we have an image of that construction here. Yes, you can see the hill there, right there. There it is. The roof tiles are being placed now. This is actually Dr. Gunny. Gunny was wanted to be involved in this project too, so he was given the responsibility of overseeing the wall construction, the rock wall construction. That's the way it looked when it was new. In our early time, it was, as you recall, it was in quite a bad shape compared to what it looked like then. This is setting the gates that had come from Bombay finally. This is towards the end of the month in August. And the tower is completed. Pendu wanted some feature that Baba would really appreciate. And he thought Baba loved high places for seclusion, so he would love this tower, to be in seclusion in this tower. You see those spires on the corners of the building there. Now, Pendu told me he was wondering what he could do to give some special feature to the building. So he thought about it, and he thought he took the drinking, the clay mutkas, we used to drink the cool water from the mutkas, the black clay mutkas. He took those, turned them upside down, filled them with mortar, turned them upside down, and he took a mason's plumb bob, drilled a hole in the bottom of the mutka and stuck that in for the finials on the top of the mutkas. And that's what you see, that special detail is. So this was all, the way they would do things, the special, everything they could do to please Baba, they would try. So this was completed then that day in August. Finally, Baba came to Maribod. Pendu came down. So what happened is they were short roof tiles in the middle of the night. So Pendu said, he sent the truck. They had to have a truck. Bullock carts were too slow, so they had a truck. He sent the truck down the hill. They took tiles off the Mandali's quarters, the old bungalow. They took the tiles off of the roof there just to finish this. That's how they managed to finish the roof on this project, because Baba wanted it done. Just about sunrise, Pendu was satisfied the work was complete. And he went down the hill and he told Padre, I'm going to sleep now. I don't care who, even if Baba comes, don't wake me up. He said, so he went to lie down, but he said his mind was racing, thinking, did I miss anything? He was going over and over and over the details in his mind. And then Baba arrived. And he knew it was Baba because he could only hear Padre's voice responding to Baba. So since he couldn't sleep, and Baba knocked on the door, he got up, opened the door. And Baba just had seen it from across the hill and he said, looks beautiful. Very nice. You finished. Really good. Now go to sleep. Forget everything. Don't worry. Go to sleep. So after 2 weeks, Pendu went to sleep. 3 days later was the, I wish I had this photograph because we do have it somewhere, but I don't have it in this group. 3 days later was the, Baba wanted to have a ceremony of appreciation for the work that was done. And it was a grand opening of this new facility on the hill. And this happened around the new tomb shrine building on the, as you know, there used to be a stage or a platform to the east of that. And Baba garlanded Pendu, said how pleased he was. I believe we still have that garland because Pendu always kept it. He said he kept it as a reminder to himself of the one time in his life he could please Baba. Let's go to the next image here. Let me see if we can go back to this one here, just to the right of that. This below that one. Right there. So this is actually from 1937, this group of the Westerners that first came to live in the Nasik ashram for the Westerners at the time. That's Pendu. This is taken on the back veranda of the old bungalow. That was where they lived. Very simple. You know, this building was built during World War I to last 28 months. Rano's mother, Nani, is there standing next to Pendu, and that's Rano Bogislav. This is Mary Backett right here with the circle. Rano and Nani behind her. Chanji is there in the picture. This is Pendu. Chanji is there here in the bottom. This is Sidhu. That's Sidhu. This is Kale Mama. And this is Chanji. Okay. Let's go to another image here. I wanted to show you another image. This will be to the left here. That's one. Let's look at that one. This now is, again, in Nasik, I believe, Orahuri, the Mandali at the time, some of them. Vishnu to the left, Kakabaria, that's Pendu, they're from the left, Adi, Padri, Baba, Ramju, Sarosh, and Minu Barucha. This might be 1938 at the latest. After this, Baba did not go to Nasik as much. But this is a good shot of some of the early Mandali right here. Let's go to the next image here of Pendu, which is this portrait of him right here. So basically, this is how Pendu looked at the time. He was on many of the Must tours with Baba in the 40s. He was one of the the persons. You know, he was a very strong person, could endure a lot. So he was made for life with Baba. In 1948, in 1947, you know the story of how the new bungalow came to be. It happened because Dr. Deshmukh happened to stay in that old bungalow with the Mandali one night, and the next he would visit occasionally. The PhD of philosophy, and the next day Baba came to visit, and casually as usual, Deshmukh, how was your night? Did you rest comfortably? Rest, Baba? I'm lucky I'm still alive. What? What happened? The roof is falling in on this building. And Baba looks at Pendu. What are you trying to do? Kill our guests here? Something like that, you know. Pendu said to Baba, you know, this is nothing new. We've been living like this for years. Baba acts surprised, like, what? How could it be so bad? The conversation went on. We need to have something better, Baba. This is the way it is. Baba, as usual, I'll give you 1,000 rupees. But Pendu now knew, no, we're fine, Baba. We don't need anything. We're fine. We'll pull on as it is. We'll make do. How can you say you make do? And then Deshmukh says he almost was killed by a falling tile. The roof is rotting away. It went on and on like this. Baba, okay, Baba said, I'll give you 2,000 rupees. No, it's fine. Eventually, then Pendu kept refusing. And Baba said, then what do you want? I said, Baba, you know this building was made to last 28 months, and now we've been living in it for 28 years. And Baba seemed so surprised. So what do you want to do? It's time for a new building. A new building? Finally, Baba consented, and Padre and Pendu said they were really very surprised, shocked that Baba would consent to spending that money. But that's how the new building was built. Let's go to this image here. This is what we know now as the main hall. You see this shot over here of Baba with his hand on the door, right there. So this is taken from the east in the back of the building, Baba coming one day after the construction had started. This might be December 1947, January 1948. That's Pendu behind Baba holding the umbrella. And Baba is blessing this door frame by touching it as the workers are getting ready to set it. So this was done during 1948, and then they had a new building. So when the new life came, the following year, all the meetings they had were in this building. And of course, Pendu was one of the yes-wallas. And Padre, clandestinely, through communication with Baba, was told to say no. And Baba made a big drama of it. There were practical reasons for it, and there were other reasons for it. Baba wanted to make an example of the situation to drive home the importance of the seriousness of their decisions concerning the new life. Somebody asked Pendu once, what was your policy concerning the new life? My policy was the same as all my policy. I just follow Baba no matter what he says. So of course he was going to be with Baba. So the new life happened. During the course of the new life, Pendu told me one day they were sitting around, the companions of the new life, and Baba was asking each one of them, how long will you live? Each one said different things, you know. Kakabaria, who was there and had a severe heart attack during the new life, had the attitude, I'm going to outlive all of these people. When he came to Pendu, Pendu said, only a few more years, Baba, till 1956. And Baba looked puzzled and said, what do you mean 1956? And Pendu reminded Baba that when they were excavating the well near the railway in 1926, he was working there on the top. So what would happen is you had workers stationed at different positions, and at the top, the rock from inside the well would be hauled up by a team of bullocks, and a crew of 2 men at the top would take that giant gamela. If you don't know what that is a bowl that holds the rock, and it gets dumped. In the course of Baba's inquiring about the work with Pendu, asking Pendu, how's the work proceeding? Any issues? Pendu said, Baba, every day I look into that well and I really feel like I'm going to fall in and die. This is it. Any day I'll fall in and die. And he said, Baba looked away a bit and said, no, 30 more years. So Pendu was resolved since 1926 to the fact that in 1956, at some point, he was going to die. So he reminded Baba of that story. And he said again, Baba looked like this, and he said, no, you'll only be half dead. So in 1956, as you recall, Pendu was one of those people in the accident with Baba. Severely injured in a coma for a couple of weeks. Nilu died. Erch was also hurt. Vishnu less so. But Pendu continued his responsibility. All through the years, his responsibility was to be, whenever Baba had a program at Maribod, Pendu's responsibility was to be the manager of the program, which involved dealing with all the participants. Adi would be the secretary. Of course, he would be involved with any of the correspondence that went out to people. But regarding the logistics for people at Maribod, that was Pendu's category, and Padre's responsibility was the superintendent. That means he had to take care of the physical logistics like water and electricity and any of the temporary shelters and all that. Padre and Pendu worked together on a lot of these things. Padre and Pendu were very close through the years, always, always. They were the two who worked for Baba. They were the two who worked for Baba. I remember a story once. Anyway, somebody asked Pendu once about Peter. Peter's an exciting personality. Peter was with Baba. You knew Peter? Oh, yeah, I knew Peter. He was a great man. Yeah, he's a spiritual man. But he wanted God realization. Like that was a weakness. He wanted God realization was a weakness to the Mandali. Because he wanted something. He wasn't just willing to do whatever Baba wanted or needed. He was, in the end, to a certain extent. But remember, he wasn't in the circle. He didn't stick close to Baba. He got realization, as was promised to him in the end. But it's an example of how different it is to be these close circle people. They have there's nothing in them that makes them go away. They can't do it. Pendu continued his responsibility of being the manager of these programs. So 1958, when Baba's birthday Sahavas was happening at Maribod, Pendu was still in charge of arrangements and those logistics. Baba at one point was not happy for some reason with what was going on. So he called the 4 men from Maribod to Marazad to dress them down. That was Pendu, Vishnu, Donkin, and Padri. And Jimmy Mystery related the story to some of us through the years, as did others. So Baba called them into the hall. See, Pendu was still living at Maribod until 1959 when Baba called him to live at Marazad. So through this Sahavas program, he was there. So Baba called the 4 men into the hall, had them stand before him, and started berating them. Berating them. Jimmy Mystery said he was actually, he had never seen it. He had never had an inside look. This was his first 2-week stretch of being invited to stay at Marazad with Baba. It was something for him to see. Bao said the 3 of them came in except for Pendu, who was struggling at the threshold, because I don't know if any of you have seen Pendu's x-ray from the accident. His pelvis was split in half and displaced by about, I don't know, maybe as much as an inch. So if this is a normal pelvis, his pelvis was like this, something like that, which is why he was essentially handicapped, crippled from 1956 onward, half dead from 1956. He couldn't lift his leg over the threshold. And it was painful. But Bao, who was in the room, said, we looked at Baba and we knew by Baba's demeanor that none of us were to assist Pendu. He wanted Baba, wanted Pendu to struggle there. And he started weeping. Baba continued to berate them, and Donkin wept, Vishnu, Padri, the Iron Man, no. Padri was a rock. So Padri just Haji Baba. Haji Baba. It was, and what did Baba do? Berate Pendu. He said, have you ever thought about my suffering? When it was over, Jimmy Mystery, who was shocked, Baba looked at him and said, I have to be cruel to be kind. Pendu was in such pain, but this is the way Baba took his mind off of that. Let's go to the next image here. Now, these images here, the color images were taken at Marazad. We can look at this one. Let's look at that one. So this is now later after Pendu was called to live at Maribod for those last 10 years of Baba's life and for the rest of his life. So you can see Bao, Francis, Erich holding the umbrella, Kakabaria, and Pendu. And essentially Baba's life for the last 10 years was between Maribod and Pune. He didn't go to anywhere. He didn't go to anywhere, travel anywhere else, including Bombay. He stopped in Ahmednagar occasionally. The last time he visited Maribod was for Gulmai's funeral in 1962. Many stories of life with Baba through the end, but Pendu had also a responsibility for night watch. Many of the Mandali had night watch responsibilities. Bao had the biggest. Bao was the youngest, and he had the longest stretch during the middle of the night. Pendu was on in the early evening usually. And what I would have to say is, from my personal observations, the diligent attentiveness and strength of will that they had through living life for Baba with him in that very strict environment created something you'll never see, and I've never seen it. I've never seen it in any yogis. Never that good. Not in any big intellectual people. Never that capacity. That capacity to be attentive. Never do you find it anywhere else. After Baba dropped the body, they continued their life at Maribod. Let's go to another image. The one to the right is a bigger group photo of the people at Maribod. That's Baidul there on the left. Vishnu, so we know this is before 1962 May. That's Meherji there, happens to be visiting. Erich, Pendu, directly behind. This is Ben Heyman who is visiting. And this is Marwan Jasawala, so we assume this is probably February 1962. Alaba, Francis came also in 1959, as you know. Alaba came just before the New Life to be one of the Mandali. Kaka and Bao. So life went on. You have all the stories of how they lived life with Baba. Baba dropped his body and they continued living there. Pendu had a severe heart attack in 1971 or 72. I don't recall. Billy Files was there personally with him, I believe, when that happened in the hospital. His speech was more severely affected after that. So when we knew him in the later days, his speech was severely affected, and a lot of people who weren't used to him couldn't make out what he was saying. But he had an excellent memory, and I would say personally, he gave me some perspectives of things that I didn't get in other places. Let's go to another image here. Now we'll look at Pendu and Naja. That one there. So there was a day when I assume, I don't know who took these photographs. Maybe Pandey took them. I don't know who, but the Maribod Mandali were photographed in, to record, I suppose, what they looked like and who they were. And this is Pendu and his sister Naja during those days after Baba dropped the body. Naja died in 1982. But before we get to that, let's go back to this photograph here because I wanted you to see Padre and Pendu here. Towards the middle right, next there, that one. This is a really good shot of how things were in the early Amartithis. And I can tell you this year has to be about 78 because Pendu has this wheelchair. And that is, Don McBride and I souped up this wheelchair with bicycle wheels so we could push Pendu around, and he couldn't walk very well anymore. So we put these bicycle wheels on the wheelchair so that we could roll him around for him to see the tents and all the facilities and everything during Amrit, because he took his responsibility till the death so seriously about making Amartithi arrangements. This is a really good shot of Pendu and Padre on the hill. This might be Baba's birthday, but I'm assuming, yes, this might be Baba's birthday. It might be Baba's birthday in 78. It looks like Michael LePage behind Padre's right shoulder there. And that might be Robert there to the left. I don't know, but that's Sushila and Mrs. Hatidaro to her left. Anyway, we would all be very focused to help Pendu during Amartithi. And towards the last few years of his work at Amartithi, his heart was getting worse. His blood pressure would be high. The doctors at Maribod would try to take care of him, give him sedatives. And one year we thought, we have everything. That's it. He doesn't have a thing to worry about. We have everything. The hostels were new. So this is now like 1984 or something. Padre had died a few years before. That we thought he has nothing to worry about. It should be fine. 83, 84, 85, something like that. I don't recall. Maybe it was 85, 86. So Pendu was basically sedated and kept back at Maribod. And we thought, we've checked everything. We've checked everything. And Pendu in his sedated stupor at Maribod suddenly comes out of it and says to Shelley or somebody, ask them if they have enough toilet mugs in the hostels. Like that. And so she sent the message. Pendu wanted to know if you had enough water containers, mugs in the toilets at the hostels. And I was involved in a lot of this logistics to help Pendu. So we looked at all of these things. So we went around and checked again, and sure enough, there were like 3 missing. Just an amazing lesson in their attentiveness, how they were. Quite amazing. They had a very frank relationship. Once, I'd say in 1975 or 76, there was an Amartithi preparation meeting in what we call the Firstly office in Ahmednagar. And the meeting was essentially Pendu, Padre, and Adi. And 2 or 3 of us observing. So we went and sat around the table, and they were at one end, and they started speaking to each other in Gujarati. And suddenly, Padre said something, and Pendu didn't like it, and then Adi said something, and then next thing, no, Pendu slams his fist, and then they said something, and somebody shouts, and Padre says something else, and then Adi laughs, and then and then Pendu says something, and then Padre says in English, "Okay, meeting's over." What? That's it. They went from shouting at each other to laughing in 10 seconds, and then the meeting was adjourned. And that was the way their relationship was with Baba. Absolutely forthright. Absolutely forthright. They were tough people. No sensitivity there. No personal sensitivity like that. In 1982, then what I'll tell you, Pendu then used to come and visit us at Maribod in the summer for a few weeks. Sometimes Padre would go for a week and stay at Maribod. This is during off pilgrim season, off pilgrim time, March 15th to June 15th. Pendu would come and stay with us for a few weeks in the summer, and we would enjoy that. I would say even Muhammad the Must, I had observed that even Muhammad would come out of his must world to be with his old friends. So one afternoon, the three old men were sitting on the east veranda. Padre on a chair like he's sitting there. Pendu on his chair, where he would keep his legs up so his legs wouldn't swell. So Padre on his chair like that, Pendu with his legs up, and Muhammad sitting on his chair, bent down like that. But as I say, Muhammad would become more of a normal guy with Padre and Pendu's company. The three of them, whatever it was, they would sit there. And so one day they were just sitting there casually, and suddenly a motorcade, an army motorcade, pulled up in front of the building, lights flashing, motorcycles. Some guy gets out. He's obviously a big officer. Come to find out, he's the big general. He's the big general of the whole area. And people are stomping their feet and saluting, and there's so many people, they're following him. And he walks in, asks me, is Padre here? I said, yes, he's right back here. And so he goes to the back and he sees Padre, and he's surprised. He sees Pendu, and he goes to them. Hello, Jai Baba. Like that. And they know him from when he was a kid. Oh, yeah, so-and-so. Pendu said, oh, yeah, how's your sister? Yeah, your mother's still alive. So he was like one of those people from the days when the Parsis and the Ranis would go to Pasti Maharaj. He was one of those children of one of those families. And all of these other high-ranking officers with him were shocked to see this general, commanding general of the whole area, paying obeisance to these three old men on sitting on chairs in the back veranda there. But to them, he was just the kid, whatever his name was. Whatever his name was, he was just the kid to them. They didn't see that he was a general and all of that. They just knew him as he was. And their lives with Baba, he was another guy. That's it. Another guy. The Padre died in 82, and Naja also died in 82. And it was a tough time for Pendu. He lost two people close to him. He wasn't totally, Padre was totally indifferent to this kind of a thing. From what I saw, Padre he had complete faith in Baba, and he accepted everything as, on that level, as Baba's plan. Pendu was a little bit, I wouldn't say attached, but He missed them. I see Michael LePage is still peeking out from behind that pole. So let's go to the next image here. This picture of Pendu with his feet up. This is typical of how he looked and in his days at Maribod. And he would sit on this chair to keep his feet up, or put his leg, or he might put his legs up on the extensions there.
His visa.
Yes. So when they always had it after Pendu had his heart attack, there was a joke. People say, how are you doing, Pendu? He said, I'm still waiting for my visa. Hasn't been stamped. That means he was waiting to die. So when Adi died in 1980, Pendu would play envious. He said, Adi, you know, he had money, he paid bribe, he got his visa. I'm a poor man, I'm still waiting here. Not fair. He would work in the clinic. Even in those later years, he would still do the work he was doing from 1925. He would help go there in the clinic, interview all the patients, get their name, write down, talk to them, find out what their condition was. Do the same routine, the day-to-day thing. So after all those years, we're still doing the same thing. After 60 years, up to 60 years later, it's doing that. All right. Let's see if we have one last image to look at here. You want me to show? Okay, look at that one. That's just, Debbie put this in here because it's Gorshad and I sitting with Pendu. And you can see the calendar is February 1981. And the sign above Pendu's head there was, you know, it's old because it says leave by 6 p.m. Gradually it went down to 5:30, then 5, and then 4, and then 3:30, and then 1 o'clock, and now it just says Maribod visitors, please leave. But this, well, to us, as Monty would say, this is your good old days. It was our good old days. This was a fine time. Very good. Next image. The last thing is, here's Pendu's marker in the cemetery. And unfortunately, the month is incorrect. The date is incorrect. It may be fixed sometime. But the computer age and access to a lot of the old records has helped us a lot. But for those of us who recall, we know that Pendu and Padri were born, Pendu and Adi were born one day apart in 1903 in September. So Pendu, as I say, who am I to say? But from all we can ascertain, Pendu is one of the first circle members of Baba. Saba Kodwal said that Baba told him that Pendu and Padri would be perfect masters in their next life. That's another indication that they were in the first circle, because they reached the end of the trail, and what could be better than being that close to Baba? There's nothing left but to be perfect. If you come back, there's nothing more you can do. Okay, did I give you enough time? I don't know how long I've been on, but
it was perfect, Peter. It was
somebody
wonderful.
else. Okay.
Thank you so much. Jai Baba. All right. Yeah, we'll open up for other people now. Just hold on one second, please. Um, as you know, we'd like you to raise your hand digitally, if you would, please, for sharing about Pendu. And I'm just looking to see if anybody's going to raise their hand. Okay. No. All right, I'll share something. Let me see if I can get there from here. I was in India in 1985, and I went with a group of people from Charles Haynes's class, where he was teaching about different world religions. And this is a picture of Charles and a friend of mine, Judy, who was in his class, and that's me. And of course, Pendu. And Pendu had us all join hands, Charles, Judy, and I, and said that he was marrying us together. And he said abracadabra, and you can see the shock look on my face. And I remind Charles, I think he kind of had a shock look as well. But anyway, this was just this wonderful time that we had in 1985. And I can't read the sign behind him as to what time we had to leave, but I think it was around 5 at that time. But just so sweet and wonderful to have that opportunity to spend with him. All right. I don't want to have to pick anyone, so if you would, please. As you know, we raise our hands digitally. So
I have a picture of Pendu.
It's beautiful. Yes.
That was in 1986.
And that
In
must be you.
1986. It was 1986.
Is that
Yeah, it
you,
was
Fred?
1986.
1986. Yes.
Christmas. It was a young man named Courtney Cunningham, the son of Carol Cunningham.
Oh, we thought it was you.
I would be mighty young.
You are mighty young. Do you have anything else you'd like to share about time with Pendu?
Well, it's just the same thing Peter said. Pendu would always say, I got my passport. I need my visa. And we'd sit there and talk, and it was amazing just to be in his company. After the stroke he had, it was difficult sometimes to hear him, his words, but it was just great to be with him.
Thank you. Thank you. And let's see, we have Patty.
Jai Baba. What I wanted to share was, it was in '82. I was staying in India for a 6-month visit, 81, 82. And Armatithi was coming, and I'd been there, and Pendu was encouraging me to try out to run with the torch. And other people were suggesting that I do that. And it turned out that I decided I would do it. And I've been running a lot and been a racquetball champion and all these different things. So Pendu would encourage me, and he said, all you have to do is, run under a 7-minute mile. And so I thought, okay, I could do this. But then you have to carry the torch, and the torch would weigh maybe 7 pounds or something like that. So I would take up I've been running at Maribod, and I thought, okay, maybe I can do this. So every Maribod visit, while I was practicing, he'd have me run up and down the Maribod, because we'd have to run up Maribod entrance, the road, and then he would time us. So there were a lot of people, other people doing it, and other people did it. And so ultimately I qualified, and he was so excited and so happy that that happened. And so I'd sit with him, but he'd always ask me how it was going and all this stuff. And I developed a sweetness with him that I had no idea who he was. I mean, listening to what Peter says, and now as I'm 50 years past the introduction to Mayor Baba, it's astounding to me that these seemingly best favorite aunt and uncles would be exactly how I would love them to be and to be with me. And I'd feel so welcomed and so included in the family. And so it came up to, evidently, I didn't know this, but he was going to choose who was the first person to come in with the torch, to hand the torch to Padre. So in those years, he was still involved with the Armatithi goings and ons. And so he ultimately chose me. And he asked me not to say anything to the other runners who was going to carry the torch. And so I thought, well, how is everybody supposed to know who's supposed to bring it in, you know? So it all turned out well. I ended up being the one who brought it in, giving the torch to Padre. It was a pretty magnificent honor. There are other stories around what happened during that run, but for me, that whole thing and that whole participation with him checking on me, wanting to know how I was doing, the fact that he chose me to bring the torch in was, in my world, extraordinary. And I loved him so much all the time for all of that personal attention. So it's wonderful to see him celebrated and to really hear the depth of his strength and his ability to obey the master, which is an extraordinary role model for all of us. So Jai Baba, Jai Baba.
Thank you, Patty. That was beautiful. Jai Baba. Let's see. Super Mastani, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Jai Baba.
Hi, it's Laurel, and Glenn is here too. I'll just say just a quickie, and then Glenn has a quickie about how they really was the good old days for us. And you know, because Pendu, Padre was stern, but Pendu was just so sweet. He was so lovable, and he was so much fun to be around. That was my experience. So he liked to certain girls, he named them. So I was super, 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 super Mastani, but bogus. And then we would just laugh and crack up, and we had all these little routines in his corner, making believe.
Oh, you do this thing.
This thing where turning away from each other, and you know, you're, oh, this guy here, he's no good, he stinks, he's lousy, I hate him, and he's doing the same thing towards me, and then turning around and looking at each other and smiling. Hello. Oh yes. It was just so much fun. And I love Pendu so much. And my first trip was in 1975. I was 19, and it was my last day at Maribod, and I, on the bus going to Maribod, I realized, oh no, I have to leave today. I might never see Pendu again, because I thought he was so old. How old was he in 1975, Peter? -3. He was 72. Oh, he was so old. And to me, anyway, and all of Maribod and all the Mandali, the thought of having to leave was just, I was crying all day long. So I was sitting in his corner crying. I couldn't stop crying. And Pendu, after a little while, and there's some other people around, he gets up, he shuffles off into his room, and, you know, shuffles back. And he had with him was little slips of paper with Baba's signature on it, because as a manager of all the things he did, Baba had to sign off on whatever it was. I don't even know what it was. So he had these sheets of paper filled with Baba's signature, and he had cut them up, and he said, because you're crying, I'm giving you this. Then he looked it around, and there was a couple of other guys there. I remember David Fenster was there. I don't remember who else, but there were a few others. He goes, because of her, she's crying. I'll give you 2. And so he gave everybody there, 3 or 4 other people, this precious little slip of paper with Baba's signature. Of course, we still have it, of course. It was so sweet. I love my Pendu very much. Now here's Glenn McGreeny.
Okay. Well, for a few years, I worked in the dispensary and then did kind of handyman things around Maribod. But after the dispensary, no, I don't want that light. After the dispensary, you know, I was supposed to see that Pendu had help, anything, go to the bathroom, whatever. So I sat there with Pendu a lot and loved Pendu. And it's a funny thing. Although we chatted about the cricket game, because he'd always listen to the cricket match on his little radio and chatted about everything, I don't remember a single Baba story except one, in that he once said that, I can't remember if it was Manzili Meme or where Peter will know. He was sitting around Baba with the other Mandali, and Baba said something, and Pendu didn't look up. He kept doing what he was doing, and Baba took a metal spoon and threw it and hit him right in the head. And Pendu said, and that made me remember, whenever Baba speaks, listen. And that was and a lot of times sitting there and, you know, helping him to the bathroom or whatever, to his room, to his lunch. That's the only Baba story I remember. There are a lot of like little cute things where Peter is saying Pendu would do the case papers in the dispensary, and he had to charge the people 50 paisa for each case paper because they would throw it away if they didn't pay 50 paisa for it. So I didn't know what I was going to say, but when Peter was talking, I remember this one cute incident of things like this would happen. He'd be sitting in his chair, and up would come 2 small little kids from the village, raggedy clothes, with a small basket with a few eggs in it. And Pendu would look at them. They knew each other. This little routine would go on. He'd examine the eggs, look at it, make sure it's good. Then he'd sort of shuffle off to his room, come back with a few paisa, give them 50 paisa for each egg, and then they would wander off with their few paisa. A lot of nice little things like that would happen in his corner. I can't think of anything else. Anyway, Jai Baba.
If you think of anything else, come, just let us know. All right. Jai Baba. Karen Talbot. Jai Baba. There you are.
All right, it's actually her inferior officer's going to talk. My computer is not working too well, so I've moved in here. This is actually somewhat amazingly a serious story, but when Karen organized this plan, I started thinking of Pendu, and I realized, like everyone else, because I talked to some people, we can't remember any of the stories. But this one I did remember, and in reflection, it totally changed my life. So I'm going to tell it for the first time, because I didn't know about this until the other day. Now, there's a little backdrop. I'm from the Northern California group, and for all these many years, we had the shadow of Sufism reoriented involved. And in the late 70s, Murshid Dus was getting older and looking for a successor, and she found her apparent successor. And it was a controversial thing with the Mandali. And for those who lived at Maribod, they knew about this. And after I took the bar exam in early August of 1980, Karen and I went to India for a very long honeymoon there, a few weeks. And some of the disaffected Sufis who were close friends of ours, very close, were there and telling the Mandali the stories of what was occurring. And it further disconcerted the Mandali And it was decided at one point that Erich would write a letter to Mersha de Deuce. And Karen, who had typed for the Mondeley, was appointed the typist. And in those days, you had to use carbons. And she typed, I think, 17 or 18 carbons, 17 carbons, amazingly enough.
And others typed as well.
And others typed as well, she's telling me. And I have no idea how the typing got down after the first few carbons. But in any event, we brought these back to Maribod, and I don't know if anyone was there but Karen and me. I don't know how we even got back. Maybe she recalls. But when I got back, I had one of them in my hands. We had read them, obviously. And Pendu called me over. He went like this. And it was a serious event. And I thought, this is quite interesting. And I sat down next to him and handed him the letter, which I think was about 2 or 3 pages. And Erich had been the spokesperson for the Mondeley. And people have been talking about attentiveness. And of course, I had just spent numerous months studying for the bar, so I knew about attentiveness. And I watched Pendu sit there in his chair with his legs up, just he and I, reading the letter that Erich had written, which they had already talked about amongst themselves. Line by line, he had his glasses on, focusing in a way I had never seen him focus before. And after about maybe 10 minutes, I sat there quietly and he sat there reading. He was done. He looked up and here's what he said to me, which I now in retrospect realize changed my life. He said, "Alan, what do you think?" Now I've thought about this even this morning when I couldn't sleep. And I thought, why would a Mondeley care about what I thought? But then I realized even more that numerous of the Mondeley had asked me that question, "Alan, what do you think?" And the humility involved in asking somebody like me, "What do you think?" was remarkable. And so my brain, in response to his questions, went through, intuitive thoughts, like, why is he asking me? And what difference is that kind of thing. Like, I was kind of stunned in a way, but I said to him, because I had read it like he had, I agree with whatever Erich said. And he shook his head and I shook my head. And a lot of things happened after that as a consequence of that. And I forgot that event until this Pendu came up, this Pendu event came up. And then I realized I spent my entire life making decisions. And a lot of my clients over the years, and I had nearly 5,000, would say to me, "Alan, what do you think?" So I had to learn, with Baba's diplomacy involved, the right thing to say to each of these persons who was looking to me for the appropriate response. And it wasn't always an easy situation. So Baba placed in my unconscious, through Pendu, the need to develop the proper response to that question. And hopefully I gave the right answer to Pendu, and hopefully over the next 33 years while I was practicing law, God willing, I gave the proper response to those thousands of people who asked me that question. So I want to thank Pendu for that. Jai Baba.
And I have something to share as well. When Peter spoke about how Pendu was responsible for all of the Amartithi celebrations and other things like that. As Alan mentioned, in 1978, I was in India, and I had the good fortune to help at the trust office. And at that time, Pendu was the main person planning the Amartithi celebration. And so I remember addressing envelopes all over India because I believe Pendu had asked me to do that. My memory is not that keen at this point, but that's what I remember. And I was so amazed when I addressed these envelopes to people in Andhra State that they had similar last names, but they had their degrees on along with their names.
9 million rows.
Anyway, so that's what I remember. And again, it was just such a treat for us to have Pendu with us. I know he wanted his visa, but we sure wanted Pendu. Jai Baba, thank you. Thank you, Peter, for sharing so much.
Thank you, Peter.
Jai Meher Baba.
Jai Baba, that was beautiful. Miss Andrea, I'd ask you to go ahead and unmute yourself.
So we don't keep hearing it.
There you are. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Hi, everyone.
Andrea.
Whenever I hear Peter talk about the Mandali or anything, I realize how little I know, you know. So I'm always so happy to hear a much fuller story. So I worked at the trust office from 79 to 81. And I went away to work, make some money, and didn't get back till 83. And then I worked there till 87. So by 1981, I knew Pendu, who used to come into the trust office months before Amartithi started, to start meeting with the tent wala and the food wallas and all the wallas. So, but what I'm so touched to see here, I have this collected, these are all my letters I wrote to the Mandali between 81 and 83, when I was part of the family and was away, sort of desperately trying to make some money. So anyway, I had a nickname, and I was Pendu's girlfriend number 2. Janaki was girlfriend number 1. And I'm going to read you some excerpts from 3 aerograms. I haven't looked at this stuff in years, and it's fantastic. Okay, I'm in New Jersey, and I'm working for Elaine and James Cox, and I'm living there. So, my dearest girlfriend, Andrea, Jai Baba, received your letter of October 15th, and also received your beautiful birthday card, and thank you very much. I had a very good birthday. It was the first time in my life that I had such a birthday. Ice cream, birthday cake, and a very, very good skit was performed in the hall for the occasion. This is dated November 1st, 1982. I'm glad to know that Elaine took photos and shared them with you. And then he goes on to some other stuff, little, just, you know, how sweet that he would write in response to my letters. When you return here after a year, we'll have a good talk about your stay in America. In Baba's love, your boyfriend, Pendu. But now this is also April 6th, 1982. My dear Andrea, number 2, Jai Meher Baba, received your loving letter. And also, Janaki was in the States at that time. So he says, you know of Padres passing away. I'm very sorry that I lost my brother, since we lived with each other for 60 years together. All at Maribod and Maribod miss him very much. He must be happy because he is with Baba, but we lost our friend. I'm going to Maribod on 14th May for a little stay, as I did last summer. I will miss you and Janaki. Glad to hear things. Oh, a little small talk. Oh, this is something for John Foreman. John Foreman is working at the dispensary here, and he is a very good help to us and does have a very good nature. After dispensary closes each day, I joke with him for about a half an hour, and then he leaves for Maribod, where he stays. And this is for the Magrinis. And by now, you must have come to know about the upcoming marriage of Glenn and Laurel. And this is, April 6th, 1982. Your boyfriend, Pendu. And one other reference from February 21st, 1982. Let me just, he says, I hope Eric and Shelley Tepperman have reported the Amartithi occasion to you. This year it rained, and because it never rained before in January at Maribod, no provision was made. But the hospital and the verandas of the Pilgrim Center housed as many as could fit in. Many people stayed up all night on the hill, keeping beloved Baba's company. And this is a cute little thing. Since I started taking methi seeds, that methi seeds is coriander, the pain in my legs has lessened. I continue to walk with my walker on the veranda here twice a day. If you've ever been there, when they would pull the benches out and they had put up a pole, and Pendu would hold the bench and the pole and practice walking when the pilgrims had left. By Baba's grace, I felt well for the Amartithi work and Amartithi days. Now there was a Chinese doctor named Manching from England. He says, and they were very close. By the way, Manching has come and gone. She surprised me by coming from Amartithi. And John Myjack has written a play, etc. So, then he says, I'm glad to hear that you have accepted my advice about saying the prayers in the morning and evening. It is a real help in keeping close to Baba. Continue to do so, and you will find that you will heartfully remember him at other times of the day. A few comments, and then when you see Janaki, give her my special love in Baba. And as for you, my dear, my number 2, while you read this letter, my special love in Baba comes straight to you. And then there's be well and happy. And then he signs, and then he says something, it was in another letter where he says, don't worry, I won't replace you with another number 2 while you're gone. Anyway, and there's 2 things that I remember. I used to hang out and just sit with Pendu. Everybody else would be in the hall listening to Erich. And I would keep him company. And I remember one time I was moping that I didn't have any work at Maribod. You know, I was trying to find work at Maribod. And Balna too said to me, I must have asked Bal if he has any sewing. I used to sew his mosquito curtain holes, his socks, you know, darning. But there's only so much. So I would just sit with Pendu, and Bal said, never think that you're not working. When you're sitting with Pendu, you're doing a very important work. And the other thing that I remember, and I'll end here, is he told me when I was always looking for jobs to do around there, he'd say, don't volunteer to be a cook because my sister Naja was always stuck in the kitchen and she would miss all the events, you know, that were going on. So don't volunteer to be a cook. And that's all I can remember. But I remember wonderful, all of us had such opportunities. I went to visit him in the hospital in Pune, and you know, he just made you feel like family. And he was just so cheerful and fun and loving. And Jai Baba.
Thank you, girlfriend number 2. That was fabulous.
Can I
Thank you.
make one comment? You
Please.
know,
Yeah.
when Pendu would go for his walking exercise, either with his walker or on with the rail and the benches there, somebody asked him once, where are you going? He said, I'm going to Bombay for ice cream.
I'm going to Bombay for ice cream.
Going to Bombay for ice cream. But then when new people would come, somebody would say, what's he doing? He's going to Bombay for ice cream. That became the thing.
I just want to mention again, if you would raise your hand digitally, if you have a PC, if you hit Alt-Y, that should bring your hand up. And with the Mac, it's Option Y. And on some of the iPad devices, there are little 3 dots. And if you click on that, you can raise your hand. Thank you. And I'll put it in the chat again, just so everybody knows. And if you want to wave, we'll try to catch you if you just need to raise your hand in like that. All right, Chris Barker, Jai Baba.
Here's another good story about Pendu's good sense of humor. This is a picture, and I don't know where I got this picture from, but there's Pendu, and the sign that he's holding, let's see if I can read it here. The sign that he's got says, Slob Guru, Bogus Yogi, smells, minor tricks and miracles while you wait. The guru is in.
And Giles.
Yeah, got Ann Giles there next to him. So hopefully you can see that. But I don't know who made the sign, but it was pretty funny. Okay, that's it.
Well, that was great. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Well, I'm going to just maybe start picking on some people. I'm sorry. Jeff, you have anything for us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Jeff.
Yeah. Well, Peter took one of the stories. He kind of went over it, and which I was going to share. But one of the stories that he mentioned about the well and Padre going to, Pendu going to the well and feeling this impelling urge to throw himself in the well. It kind of felt like he was worried that he had like suicidal thoughts, but Baba told him not to worry, when you're on a tall building or on a cliff or something, and you look over and you feel that, he said, that's the power of gravity. That's a real power of gravity on you. And I've had that same experience myself, and I'm sure others have. But anyway, and then Baba said, don't worry, you know, I won't take you for another 30 years. And so, you know, this was shortly before the second accident, and Baba said he would just take half of him. But when I think about that, look at, you know, I would say, you know, in order to lessen Baba's suffering, physical suffering in this life, his cousin was able to allow himself to be disabled the rest of his life. I mean, that's the, you know, kind of giants that these people were. And one kind of thing that Fred Stankus mentioned, I had showed a picture of Pendu, you know, on you go out there on Christmas and he would be dressed up like Santa Claus. And I would think, you know, the way Christians have the idea, well, what if, you know, you saw Peter or Matthew or Mark or Mary or Martha, you wouldn't really think of them as that, what can I say, that humorous and fun-loving and everything, even though they were, I'm sure, but the way it's passed down, they're kind of revered people. But imagine, you know, St. Peter, you know, wearing a Santa Claus outfit, you know. I always kind of like the down-to-earth quality, the deeply human quality of the mandali. That was adorable. And I don't know, it's too bad Dan Ladinsky isn't here, because Danny has relayed this to me. He was there helping Pendu toward the end, and Pendu would be in that room near Mandalay Hall. And when the buses would arrive and he would hear everybody saying, Jai Baba, Jai Baba, Jai Baba, he said one day he confessed to Danny, you know, when they say Jai Baba, I know they're referring also to me, but I have to keep my mouth shut. I can't respond because it's all for Baba. But he was already so effaced that to say Baba was to refer to him, you might say. So, and then the other last thing that always, and Peter kind of touched on this, that when Peter came to Baba in the early 20s, he wanted God realization, and Baba gave him all of these austerities that he had to endure. And then eventually he made it back to Bombay, and people kind of gathered around him. There were Baba groups in Bombay. But one time he came out in 1938, Bao Kauchuri describes this, asking Baba, you know, you said you would give me God realization. And now, you know, almost 2 decades has passed and he hasn't received his realization. So while he's in the midst of that, this is on the hill, and Pendu's in the midst of doing all this construction work, you know, with the second floor of the converted water tower and Baba's tomb and everything. And while he's asking that, he calls Pendu over and says, Pendu, what do you want? I'll give you anything. What do you want? And Pendu looks up and says nothing and goes back to work. So you got one guy that wants realization over here, and the other guy doesn't want anything. So those things are very telling about the quality of the mandali. And Francis Brabazon's phrase, which I like so much in describing the mandali, he said, Baba, that they were exalted to dust. What a phrase, exalted to dust, referring to the mandali. So that's it.
Wow. Thank you, Jeff. That was beautiful.
May I make one comment?
Please.
Yes, I realize I forgot to tell you the other part of the story was that when Pendu explained that detail about Baba said in 1956, no, you'll only be half dead, that he knew he would die in 86. He said, because that was another 30 years. He said half, then another 30 is the other half. So I will probably die in 86. I have to wait that long. Okay. And he did die in 86. And yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Adi made the comment that he thought Baba gave Pendu more suffering because he was tough enough to take it. It was his fate.
Yeah.
So beautiful. Jimmy, Con, I don't know if you have anything that you'd like to share. I can't hear you. For some reason, you're not coming through.
Yeah,
There you are.
sorry.
No, Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Already put on the chat that Masaji was the first person that Baba said that don't worry, I will look after your children. Then thereafter, every video that came to Baba, I know of another woman also, Baba would tell that video that don't worry, I'll look after your children. And the same thing happened to my mother, our mother, in 1960 at Guru Prasad. Baba said the same thing to my mother, our mother, when she was wiping her eyes, saying that don't worry, from today they are mine, I will look after them. So that's one thought, one parallel. I think Alan wants to say something. He raised his hand. Alan.
This is just my, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Well, I saw the picture of Pendu in the Santa Claus outfit, and I started laughing because in 2000, I think it was 11, 12, and 13, I played Santa Claus at Maribod at Christmas. And the first year, I actually wore that Santa Claus outfit and wore that Santa Claus beard. And I just want to state for the record, in the 24 years or so that it was last worn by Pendu, I don't think it hit the dry cleaners. And I don't think the beard hit the dry cleaners either. So the next year, the next 2 years, I bought my own Santa Claus costume. And I'm not sure they were very good. They were like this plastic ones from China, but it was very funny wearing Pendu's Santa Claus outfit. And only after I got out of it did I say, well, was this cleaned? And he said, we don't think so. So, who knows? But anyway, I just want to share that follow up to the Santa Claus outfit. Jai Baba.
Thank you, Jai Baba, Ellen. Well, I'm just looking to see there's no one else with hands up. And I don't know if I should pick on anybody that hasn't spoken. So, Peter, I just wonder if there's anything, or Debbie, if you have anything.
Oh, I just wanted to thank Karen Talbot and you, Ruth, and Angela for organizing this today. It was like such a delight to step into that. Now, I only had one quick little story, is that Pendu would always read the newspapers. You know, he'd sit in that chair. And the year that Baba arranged for me to come over there and sing at a hotel, they happened to have decided in the press to call me Delectable Debbie. Now, he was just thrilled when he found that in the middle of the paper, and he went and showed everybody Delectable Debbie. Well, you know, at first, you know, the Mandali knew me as, you know, the nice singer, but then all of a sudden Delectable Debbie. And then, of course, later in that year, well, how can I say, I got engaged to Peter, and all of a sudden, instead of being that nice gal, I was Delectable Debbie, stealing away that Peter Nordeen. But in the long run, it turned out just fine. But I don't know, that was just a little aside to say how he was always up on current events. And I was very touched to hear Andrea's letters and how he was even telling her, you must have heard about Glenn and Laurel's upcoming marriage and how homey and family he was. And of course, all of them were. They just, they are our family. So what a joy. This has been a joy today. And Peter's still here.
Peter, did you raise your hand here? Go ahead.
Did you have anything? Oh, anybody else?
Waving.
Oh, he's waving.
Are you waving? All right.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Then I think Al.
Ruthie, you just unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I'm just asking for Karen and Alan, go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to quickly, read something that I found while I was researching this because I thought it was such a wonderful story. In 1945, Baba sent Pendu and Don to find a place for him to stay. And they met with the landlord, Pendu and Don.
Oh, this is stark.
And the man was a lawyer, the landlord, and he was entertaining his guests. They talked with him, and the lawyer drew up an agreement in Urdu. So Pendu returned to the hotel late that night, and Baba asked, what does the agreement say? Pendu said, it's in Urdu. I can't read it, but he prepared it according to our terms. Baba said, but we must know exactly what it says. It has not been, if it's not been properly drawn up, there's going to be trouble later. So it was quite late at night. Most people were asleep. And who was Pendu supposed to find to translate the document? He left, and as he was walking around the hotel, he saw 3 men in a room drinking wine. Pendu asked if anyone read Urdu. And one of them rather drunkenly answered, come, friend, I am your servant. Ellen, I can't do this. At your command, ready to obey. What have you brought? Pendu took him to Baba. Baba was there also. The man staggered in, grandly shook hands with Baba, and began reading the agreement out loud with dramatic flourishes. Baba was amused and entertained by his performance. He would indicate to Pendu to tell him, read it again, and the drunken man would begin once more and falter through it. After reading the full text several times and shaking hands with Baba, he staggered out. As he was leaving, he said to Baba, if my services are required further, don't hesitate to call me. After he left, Baba had 2 or 3 corrections made, and the next day the agreement with the lawyer was executed. Jai Baba.
Oh, that was great. Thank you so much, Karen. That was wonderful.
Everybody, this was a great, great celebration for Pendu.
Well, we have Judith Shotwell. So I'm going to ask you to unmute, Judith.
Hi, Jai Baba.
Oh,
I just want to share a little story about Pendu. I also, I think it was 1985, when I was in India, I was prompted to want to run and carry the torch at Amartithi. And of course, I had a lot of questions whether I should do it or not, but I was told I should go talk to Pendu, which I did. And Pendu encouraged me because he said it would really please Mara. And so, but in order to run, I would have to practice every day, and I had to carry a long pipe while I ran so that my arms would be good and strong for the torch. So I faithfully did this, and I would be out there at 5:30 or 6 in the morning, running around Maribod with my huge lead pipe, which Pendu provided. And as I was doing that, as I was running, I would feel like, what am I doing? I mean, I had this image of all the ladies who surrounded Mara as being, you know, very feminine and gentle. And sort of elevated. And here I was out slogging along in the dark with my lead pipe and sweating. And, but I kept with it. And finally the day came when I was at Maribod, and Pendu said, well, it's time for the test. So he also had me run down the Maribod Road. It was noon. It was so hot. I thought I was going to die of a heart attack. But I passed the test. And then very sweetly, again, because it would please Mara, Pendu arranged that I would be the one to arrive at the fire, at the Dooney, carrying the torch. And later, I was very shy around Mara, around most of the Mandali, very shy. And Mara was up on the hill afterwards. And I saw her and I was feeling shy and didn't know whether I should go greet her. And I did. And indeed, Mara was delighted and giggled and spoke also about how women need to be strong and we need to be in the world doing these things. And I just really thank Pendu for encouraging me, and I was always touched by his desire to please Mara in all things. Yeah, after Baba, of course. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, Judith, that was beautiful. Thank you. I just wanted to read something in one of the texts. There's a question for Chris Barker to please place that text of what was on the sign that you shared in the chat. Some others would like to get their hands on it, apparently.
It's coming. I'm typing it.
You're great. Thanks, Chris. And Lisa Greenstein. Jai Baba.
It's actually Ron Greenstein.
Oh, sorry, Ron.
I'm using Lisa's computer, though. That's why it said that.
You're a little bit in the dark. Thanks.
There is a poem that's one of my favorite poems to read from Steve Klein's book, Oh Beloved. And I know Steve, I've talked with Steve about his poetry, and I know he used to, or maybe still does, he looks at someone and observes them, and then he'll write a poem as if he were them. And I'm guessing that this poem I want to read, I always think of Pendu, just from whatever I've heard of Pendu and whatever I've experienced of him. But see what you think. Those of you who knew Pendu way better than I did. In a congregation of holy men, what can we say? When sincere seekers describe the experiences they've had, we listen respectfully, sometimes even in awe, but we have nothing to add. On our way to Damascus, when the air is suddenly filled with the electric charge of godhood ascending, gapping the sky in blinding flashes of revelation, and the very heavens reverberate with the sound of angels' wings, and others are knocked head over heels by visions. We are the dull ass who continues plodding his way, oblivious to all but the road ahead, and perhaps on the lookout for a tasty thistle or a bunch of hay. And our understanding is no less limited than our experience. We cannot follow the subtle nuances of metaphysical debate, and to be honest, cannot even persuade ourselves that we should. We know only two things, but we know them with all the stubborn certainty an ass possesses. We know we have a friend, and we know that is enough. That's from Oh Beloved.
Thank you. That was beautiful, Ron. All right. Peter, Deb, I think if there's anything else, we'll just go ahead and have a moment of silence. Okay. All right, let's all have Let's have a moment of silence and then we can end with Avatar Maribod Ki Jays. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Baba.
Avatar Maribod. Avatar Maribod.
Baba Ki Jai. Baba Ki Jai.
Hi, Carl.